Test? Perfect.
Whoop, test. Nope. Did you have to press something?
I don't think so.
Test now? Nope.
You were going to have me do the first one, right?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yep, green button is on. Right. Can you hear me? Either way, what do you guys prefer? Yeah, I can do it.
Does yours work?
Yeah.
Yeah, Dustin's
Yeah.
is working. Okay, and do I need to press anything on here?
Nope, just talking to it.
Just talking to it. All right.
Way to
Test
pivot.
again. You guys
There
can
you
hear me?
go.
All right, thank you. Okay, Dustin's actually going to kick us off.
Yeah.
Thanks for having us.
Yeah, thanks for having us. So good afternoon, everyone. I'm Dustin Schimek, and Katie's with me here from the Master Lock Company, so appreciate the invitation from the WTA to be here. It's our first time, actually, at a WTA event, so really cool. Nice to see everyone, and this is a great organization. So thanks for the invite. Our topic is actually, if I go back, leveraging data for growth. So we are actually on the business side. We're not in IT. We're part of a kind of central analytics team at Master Lock. So going to be a little bit probably different perspective, but just wanted to be upfront about that. So talk a little bit about Master Lock. So we are actually celebrating our 100th anniversary. So we've been in business for 100 years. Those of you that are from Milwaukee have probably heard of it. If you had a locker growing up, how many of you had one of those combination locks on it? Yeah, just about everybody, right?
Yes, I like
that
it.
was my first experience with our brand too. I had one of those on many, many lockers growing up over in Fort Atkinson here. You've probably seen our laminated locks, the one on the bottom of the screen all over the place, but we do have some products in other categories too. So we actually are in the safety business, so we make safety locks, lockout, tagout devices, basically safety product for supporting lockout, tagout applications in, say, manufacturing environments, heavy industrial environments, things of that nature. We also have an expanding portfolio of electronic products. You see down at the bottom, that's one of our Bluetooth lock boxes. We have some Bluetooth padlocks as well. That one could hang on your door with the shackle on top there, and you can use your phone to unlock it if you need to get a key out or give access to someone to get a key to get into your house. And then we also bought a safes business a few years ago. So we bought Sentry Safe. You know, when I talk with people, some people know that, some don't. But this is a big part of our business and has been a big area of focus for us in the last few years. So if you have a residential safe in your home, chances are it's probably Sentry, and this is a big part of what we do too. And then just to introduce myself, and then we'll turn it over to Katie. So I am a father of two there. We are actually, I'm with my wife at the Milwaukee County Zoo in the fall of 19, blissfully unaware of everything that was about to happen there in 2020. But we live over on the west side of Wauwatosa, so really close to the Brookfield Conference Center. I'd actually watched this go up, and then I felt so bad when COVID hit. I was like, gosh, they built this beautiful facility, and then you see the empty parking lot driving by here all the time. So that's me. I'm Director of Strategy and Analytics at Master Lock, and my role is really all about what the title is of this presentation, leveraging data for growth. So I maintain a roadmap of kind of growth-oriented analytics projects for the business. I'm responsible for ideating what goes on to that roadmap and executing on all the items on that roadmap. So that's me.
Hi, everybody. I'm Katie Hermann. So you see me there on the screen. I'm Senior Director of Advanced Analytics and Demand Planning at the Master Lock Company. So my team and I work on things like pricing optimization. We have demand planning and forecasting, as it says there. We have things like channel and customer strategy. So Dustin and I both are fortunate to work a lot with the kind of the front end of our business, all of our customer-facing teams, product teams, and then we partner very heavily with our IT business as well. So we are going to talk today, as Dustin mentioned, about leveraging data for growth. And Dustin and I both really, strongly believe that that is all about three major things here. So the first and most important is people. How do we make sure that we're attracting and then retaining and developing talent that develops our culture around data? How do we make sure we've got the right folks working on the right things? Going along with that very closely is business problems, or maybe we prefer to say ideas. So once we've got that great talent pipeline and we've created the culture around data, how do we make sure that we're evaluating what business opportunities and challenges are going to get us the most bang for the buck? How do we evaluate those things as a team? And then third, last but not least, very close to Dustin's heart as well as my own, is process. So once we've gotten the team, we've developed the ideas, we've got a pipeline of what we're going to build, how do we make sure that we've got that continuous feedback loop? We're looping in the rest of the business that needs to know what we're building, how to use it, what the outcomes are going to be, and then how do we measure those outcomes to make sure that we're working on the most impactful ideas. So we'll talk about all three of those things today, but the first is really around the people pillar, building your data community. So how have we done that at MasterLock? We have been really fortunate. I've been here for about 4 years, Dustin a year longer than me, for 5 years, and we've been working to build this great team of folks, not just within the analytics team that we are fortunate to be part of, but throughout the company. How do we first, attract talent and then retain and develop our talent? It's all about having folks with a genuine interest for solving problems. I had a great boss a couple companies ago who used to say, as analysts, we run to the fire. That's who we want to have working with us, are people who are not going to shy away from the tough questions. When something's hard, okay, let's put resources behind it. So we really look for that in our teams and try to nurture that culture. Dustin?
Yes, absolutely. So, once we get good talent on board, which I agree that is absolutely the most important thing for making impact with analytics, what we want to make sure we do is cultivate an environment where people want to win. They're celebrated for winning. And we do that in a variety of different ways at MasterLock. So a few examples. First is we're fortunate enough to have kind of a portal available to us at our company where we can log in, recognize people, have that recognition. It's kind of like a social media platform. Be visible across the entire company. People can go in and comment on what people have posted, and you can also kind of give prizes, gift cards, things like that, paid for by our company. So super fortunate to have that. That's something that we leverage all the time for our analytics team members, especially given we know that folks in IT, analytics, data, et cetera, can work some long hours. Awesome opportunity, one that we take full advantage of. A couple other examples. We're fortunate enough to have a president at MasterLock who's willing to give recognition kind of at the highest level in his presentations to folks that have executed on analytics projects. Data is near and dear to his heart, and so we're very fortunate to have a president that issues recognition across any of our associates that have produced a project that produces a cool win for the company. And then the other thing that we do, if we go from top level all the way down to the bottom, in our meetings, what Katie and I really try to be intentional about is giving recognition very directly to people and celebrating successes and wins in our team meetings so that everybody is aware of what we did, because chances are if someone had success with something in one area, we could probably replicate something similar to that in another area. And this is something that has created, like I said, cultivated a nice, I think, competitive in a healthy way environment where folks like to go after, do innovative things, get those wins.
Perfect, thanks, Dustin. So the next thing here that really goes along with that, celebrating the wins, is also making sure that as leaders we're creating psychological safety for our team members. What does that mean? Really, what we want to make sure is that people feel confident coming forward with new ideas. They know that if they come with a new idea, that they don't have to have every single piece of the puzzle exactly buttoned up. We can generate ideas and check assumptions together. So how do we model that? As leaders, I think we have to do that ourselves by coming to the table with an idea and asking questions of our teams and say, I'm grappling with this question. Can you help me figure out this piece? Am I thinking about this correctly? What do you think about this? So we try to do that, as well as just making sure that we're also letting our teams know, hey, here's the things that I'm working on. Here's something that I don't feel that I'm great at and I want to get better at. Give me feedback on it. So the more we do that as leaders, the more our teams feel comfortable saying, oh yeah, okay, so this is a place where I can say, hey, I'm good at this. I'm not as good at this. Help me get better. And last but not least,
Yeah, so we think that if you do each of these three things, you're probably going to have a pretty fun environment, but there's other things that you can do on top of that. And I did just want to say one thing too before I move on to the next piece about this last piece. So this kind of probably sounds like a pretty soft thing, and I know when I first heard it, I thought the same thing. So I first heard the term psychological safety at Tableau Conference 2018 in New Orleans, if anyone was there. Adam Grant, who's an organizational psychologist at Wharton, was the keynote speaker. He's authored several books on organizational psychology. And one suggestion that he had as a common theme in his books is that you create psychological safety with your teams. And why is that? Well, he mentioned at the conference that those that have it, teams that have it, it's one of the one contributors in terms of producing innovative projects out of the team. So that got my attention, especially being a leader, emerging leader in the analytics field. But I printed out a tweet that I found of Adam Grant. You can follow him on Twitter, I guess. But he tweeted about this concept back in February, and he said, without psychological safety, people hide mistakes, withhold ideas, and they aim to prove themselves and protect their image. Any of you seen any of that going on in a business? Probably quite a few. With psychological safety, people admit errors, they voice suggestions, and they strive to improve themselves and protect their team. So to me, this concept, there couldn't be a more important concept in analytics, right? We're trying to come up with creative projects. Creativity, if you read some of the articles out there, is one of the most desirable characteristics in an analytics professional. So why would you go through the effort and recruit them and bring them on board if they didn't have this concept in place? So we're super passionate about it. If there was one thing I would say, fight hard to get this concept in place at your business. Share it with your leaders. Meditate upon it yourself. It will change things, I guarantee you. All right. Wipe the sweat from my brow there on that topic and move to the next one. So in terms of making it fun, like I said, we think that if you do these first few things, you're going to have a pretty fun environment by default, but encourage involvement in the analytics community. Southeastern Wisconsin, we're fortunate to have so many local organizations, similar to this one. Think of like the Tableau user group. We're big Tableau users on the front end of our business. Encourage folks to take a few hours to plug into those things. Just from a networking, idea sharing, Tim mentioned I think people like to be invested in, right? Encourage them to be a part of that stuff. Global conferences, we wish we could go to more of those right now. Obviously, when we do get back to it, we've budgeted to send our teams to it, so we're excited about that. But the cool thing is we really encourage folks at MasterLock that are in analytics, in data, in IT, to go out and be a part of these events. Speak, Sherry Creel is a member of our team as an example. She was a featured speaker in the Tableau user group meeting back in Q1. We had a great time with our team watching her speak in there. I think it encouraged other team members to see another team member kind of leading, sharing what she had done. Katie spoke yesterday. She's at celebrity status now, actually. She spoke yesterday at the National Dedicated Conference, which was streamed all over the web, so that was pretty cool, and then here we are today. So we really believe in this stuff, and we think it's really creating a lot of buzz and excitement at MasterLock. And then just the last couple things, we've done things like had viewing parties for virtual conferences. We're fortunate enough to have a nice facility in Oak Creek where we have an auditorium where we can put streamed events right up on a large screen, socially distance, watch them together, have lunch afterwards, things like that. Really does help to build a community. It's amazing sometimes how much small things like that can have from an impact standpoint. And then this last one, I have to give huge credit to Katie for. She spearheaded creating an analytics day at MasterLock. So one day per quarter, we have analytics day. And it started with a little lower attendance, but now we're to the point where anyone that kind of touches data and analytics at MasterLock, anyone that owns a dashboard, whatever, report, regardless of whether they have analysts in their title, they're invited to come to this day. We do things like we have speakers talk about things that they've put in place that have made an impact from an analytics standpoint. We watch videos online regarding analytics, some training stuff, do Viz Wars, things like that. We've gotten to the point where I think just about every single person that touches data in our company is at least aware of it. Many of them are attending. So that's pretty cool. All right. So now I'm going to shift from the development and the individual, talent piece to ideation and solving those business problems. So on the front end of the business, from an analytics standpoint, a big thing that we do, Katie and I encourage others to do, is keep a journal of your ideas, right? You keep a journal?
I do.
Yes.
I do, yes.
If you don't keep one, I encourage it. And so, how many of you had an idea come to you in the middle of the night, right? I know I do just about every night, but I'm a little weird. But I keep one next to my bedside. I keep this one, actually. I brought mine with me. And if I have an idea, something that I think would be impactful to the business through the work that we do, I write it down. And then I take it with me to my desk. And as I'm in meetings, if I hear the same questions come up over and over, first of all, I can't stand that. If I hear the same question come up and we haven't built something that can answer that, right? Or make it better, that irritates me. But so what do? I take that out on my journal, I write it down. And I talk about in here what a solution might look like for that, okay? Then take it from your desk, throw it in your backpack, take it with you to, when we get back face-to-face, bring it to meetings, bring it to events like this, log your ideas. And then what do you do with them? Well, since we're on the business side, we put them into a spreadsheet. Sorry that that's probably a dirty term here, but we'll put them into a spreadsheet, and then what we do is we assign value to them, kind of on a 1 to 10 scale, we'll say as an example, and then the effort that it would take. So the value that you would get out of the project, and the effort it would take to implement it. And what's cool about that is you can go from having a book of ideas to seeing kind of visually, okay, on a scatter plot, where are your no-brainer ideas? Where are the ones that you perceive to be high value, low effort? Where are the ones that are kind of quick wins, maybe low to medium value, but low effort, so they're short putts, you just go after it? Where are the ones that just don't make sense from an ROI standpoint? They're low value, it would take a ton of effort to do it, probably not something realistically you want to invest precious resources into. And then your maybes. You have some that are going to be high value, high effort, and it might be well worth it to put in that effort to get that value, right? But this is where a roadmap comes into play. And so, seems simple, but this is something that we really work this process in our business, is we will take kind of those ideas that were on the higher value side of things, put them onto a roadmap, and we'll start out with, in the near term, maybe we're working on things that are, high to medium impact, low to medium effort, things like that. Maybe the stuff out in time is higher impact, higher effort, but we want to get attention to it now. So we're going to start talking to those things now, and we're going to show some of the connection points between the items that are on our near-term roadmap and what they're going to enable for the items on our long-term part of our roadmap. The other cool thing I think about road mapping is that when you build a roadmap, how many of you have ever had someone ask you, can I have something tomorrow? And if you say no, how many times have they said, why not? Right? Anandi, I'm sure you have. Probably for me a few times. No, but what I've done with roadmaps is I've said sometimes, when there's extreme examples where someone really needs something, right, that's not maybe the highest value, and they want it in the next few days or whatever, and they say, well, what else is it that you're working on? When you show them a roadmap, and you say, hey, I've built a scatter plot of value versus, effort, things like that, chances are you've probably thought about those things pretty well, and when they look at that, you say, yeah, that makes a whole lot of sense. Gosh, I wouldn't want to be disruptive to that. Maybe we can talk about when it would be reasonable to do this. So that's another byproduct of road mapping. But I threw up very blurred images, so you can't see what this stuff is. But I started out with version 1 5 years ago, kind of my roadmap, and that's evolved into version ? Today with a lot of different things. But it's just been a vehicle that's worked very well for me. All right, and then last thing, we'll talk about more of this in the end of the presentation, but one thing just to keep in mind is you're working a roadmap and you're kind of prioritizing things on there. Maybe you've got your enablers in the beginning and, kind of your higher value, higher effort things later on in time is just this concept. Has anyone read Atomic Habits, the book? Right there, cool, here. So he talks about, James Clear talks about this concept of law of 1% improvement. All it is just the math behind if you take day 1 out of day 365 in a year. If you have an investment could be a stock in your portfolio, or it could be an analytics project that you're investing in. But if that investment starts at $100, it gets 1% better every day. What you see down there in the lower left is, gosh, it takes courage to hold on to that investment, right, for a while. Because until it hits that inflection point in the center, you're not seeing very strong results from it. But what happens is in the end, after you get incrementally better every day. And this is day 1 to 365. It could be day 1 to 1,000 or beyond, whatever, right? But look at the difference between what happens if you get incrementally better, just a little bit every day with something. You start small, let it evolve over time. Look at the difference between the high point there, the maximum point on that chart, and the black line. The black line is if you don't do anything. You know, you buy something. I think some of us always are definitely heard the horror stories, right, of $1 million projects, $10 million projects. They come in, no one really got anything out of it, right? I think that's what the black line is. I think that's the math behind that kind of stuff. So file this concept away. Yeah. What's that? 37 times. Yeah. All right. I'm going to hand it back to Katie.
Yeah, thank you. All right. So once you've got that roadmap, how do you go about building these things so that they're sustainable and so that you kind of get the buy-in that you need to keep it going? So we're going to talk about a couple different examples here from Masterlock over the last couple of years and more specificity here. But first, let's talk about what a high-impact solution looks like. So first, good data. You've got to have the data as the building block for all of the analytics that you want to build. On top of that, and eventually the data-driven solution and the action items that you're getting at. So that clean data set that's accessible to users, super important building block that can take a lot of time to build. Intuitive analysis. So once you've got that data, are you making sure that you're building an analysis and then communicating that in a way that business users can understand and then go take and own and pursue the strategy? Users are engaged, going right along with that then. Have you set up a good training plan for people to hear about, okay, how do I use this data set? What do I do with it? How do I interact with this dashboard and pull out the insights that I need for my part of the business? And then finally, the process for using goes along certainly with training on the front end and continuously, but also then measuring the impact of what you've built, measuring those outcomes, and then making sure to get back together as a team and talk about them, think about what's working, what may not be working as well, gather the feedback, and then continue to improve. So one of the projects that we have worked on a lot over the past few years on the retail side of our business, so we work with a lot of big box retailers. It could be a home improvement store, it could be a mass channel, like your Walmarts of the world, or online, or a combination. So with all these different channels and all these different venues of selling, we have a lot of external data, point of sale data, meaning what's selling through at the Home Depot down the street or the Walmart down the street the other way throughout our entire network. How do we know what's selling, at what price point is it selling, at what frequency and velocity? And then what do we do with that data? So ultimately what we want to get there is we want to understand that data so that we can then better predict where our product is needed to make sure that it gets into the hands of the end customers when it needs to, where it needs to, and that it's the right product for their use case. So when I first began at Masterlock about 4 years ago, we had a lot of great analysts doing really good reporting, and Excel was really the only platform that we had at that time to do that reporting. And so I'm sure, raise your hand if you've ever got the spinning wheel in Excel where you're like, oh my God, my entire report is gonna die. Yes, a lot of people. So that happened to us. We had to really figure out what's the right granularity here where we're not gonna shut down our computer every time we try to update this report, but we also have enough level of detail that people can take some insights from the report. Super hard to do in Excel with this volume of data. So we were fortunate to work with our BI partners and with analysts on the retail side of the business to build this point of sale data warehouse. And that really enabled us to automate a lot of our reporting, enable that quick, speed to insight, and then build upon those automated reports with, okay, what else do we want to know about this data? Where can we spend our time really digging in and coming up with action items and talking about those with our teams? So never before was this more important than during COVID. Where do we need to focus? We have our teams suddenly working from home, maybe not with all the technology resources at their disposal as they had in the office. So how do we spend our time doing the most important things? Kept getting a lot of questions, of course, about where do we need product? Where are we gonna stock out? And before we had the data warehouse, we would have had to just keep generating, Excel report after Excel report. Every time a new question comes up, you have to, okay, now I gotta go grab the data that answers that question and generate another report. So a lot of time spent wrangling the data. But luckily, with our point of sale data warehouse, we had these awesome dashboards already at our disposal that we could look at. So we started consuming our point of sale maps, especially a lot during COVID, especially during the first 3 months, I would say, last year, where we were reviewing those maps every week and saying, okay, what are we learning from these as they change week over week? Where are we potentially at risk of stocking out of product? Is there something that we could do to prevent that? Can we recommend a substitution item? Can we ship product direct from our warehouse right to the store, kind of bypass our retailers' distribution systems? So really trying to creatively problem solve with our teams internally, and then with our sales teams partnering to talk with our customers about ultimately wanting to get product into our end customers' hands, which is our goal as well as our retailers' goal. And then just an example of that there. So being able to quickly pinpoint within minutes, it's this retailer, it's this product, here's what we're going to recommend to do about it, versus spending hours and hours building Excel reports to get to that insight. All right, and Dustin's going to walk us through an example on the commercial side of our business.
For sure. Okay. So a second example here. So when I started at the organization, I mentioned that I put together a roadmap. And one of the first things I put on there, this would be one of those high value, kind of high investment exercises. I put this out a few years as kind of an aspirational item. But what was very clear to me within a few weeks of working there was that just by listening in the meetings that I was in, on the calls that I was on, what was very clear to me was having visibility to where our products, I'll grab one of the kind of tried and true locks, laminated locks that many of you have seen, where they're being used. And so, this might seem like a simple thing, but actually on the commercial side of the business, we sell our product through distribution. So think about large industrial distributors as an example. Let's say a hotel chain is an end user. They may have a catalog. A hotel may have a catalog that they order locks out of. And so great visibility to see the sales to our distributors. But that data at the end user level, the hotel level, that was a little harder to get at. We did have it. It appeared in some places, the most prominent of which was a big daily PDF. I put a picture of War and Peace up there that several years ago was sent out daily to our organization, several folks in our organization. And what it was a PDF of all of the invoices that went into each of the sales territories on a daily basis. So it was a snapshot of the invoicing for the day. So no history, no trending, no drill down, nothing interactive, nothing like that. And what we landed with, to cut to the chase, before I walk through a few examples, is now something that we use as kind of actually a lead generation tool. So went from just kind of a nice to have, hey, here's what's going into your territory, copy of all the invoices, to a tool that we're actually actively using for lead gen. And what that looks like is, I had to blur out the example, but dashboards used on a self-service basis by our sales team to get an interactive view of where product sits in their territories, and with quite a substantial amount of history. So it's not just one day anymore, it's quite a bit more than one day. And to hit it home here, when we were getting the daily copy of War and Peace, the big PDF every day, we would know that maybe some of our locks, let's say 100 of our locks were sold through a distributor, perhaps to a business. Maybe we would see that, maybe we wouldn't. If it was drop shipped as an example, you might see that in the second address line on the invoice. But we know that we sold 100 locks through a distributor to a business, today, as an example, today, right? No history. But what if we wanted to know how many of that business, let's say it was a hotel, to use the original example, buying from an industrial distributor, how many of these locks that they were buying today, how many have they bought historically? Or what other product does that hotel have installed? If they're purchasing a large volume of one kind of lock, they might have a different one. What about our safety locks? Do they have any safety procedures in place that require safety equipment? Not sure, don't know, right? All we see is today's invoice. What about one of our higher end products, higher price products? Do they have any of our new electronic products? There's a difference in price between the laminated lock and this, right? It might be, even if they haven't bought it, maybe that tells us something totally different insight, right? Maybe that's an opportunity for the sales team to take a look at. So depending on the profile of what product they have installed, it could be different action items, right? What about, do they own other locations? So does the parent company of that hotel buying that product on that day, do they have other locations? Don't know. We just have the invoice, right, that we saw for the day. And then who else is buying similar product like this? So if I'm a sales rep and I'm traveling to Milwaukee and I'm gonna visit a hotel in Milwaukee that's bought 100 of those laminated locks, you know, I might wanna look at where are there other hotels in the area that have bought 100 of that same lock, or 1,000 or 10,000 or whatever, right? Because let's just say as an example, those locks are good candidates to upgrade to a higher priced item, right? That'd be very interesting to me. And I could take the same sales message to every location, right? So it sure would be helpful to see where all of those are. And when I'm on the road, be able to interact with a view that shows me where they are, right? So that is, very simply put, big project, but simply put, what we landed with this one. Okay, so going back to our rule of 1% improvement, what happens when you get 1% every day, better every day? What did this look like practically speaking in terms of some of our analytics projects? So I'll just take that last one as an example, then also tie it a little bit to Katie's example too. But what I did with that project I just kind of walked you through was started very small. I didn't go in and say, hey, we're gonna do this huge thing with machine learning and all that, and we're gonna predict where your next sales are gonna be, and we're gonna tell you, salesperson, where to go every day. Didn't start that way. What I did was I started thinking about where are all the places that data on where these locks reside sits. It's in more than one place, right? And so what I did was I built a little database that would make several of my IT partners cringe. I created a little database using a subset of our data, one region's worth of data for X number of years, built it on my own, connected it to Tableau, built some dashboards that could, you know, hypothetically show a salesperson what was in their territory. And so then what I did there was I started with just 4 sales reps that covered that geography and that subset of data in the little database that I built, right? And I worked with them to share with them what I had done, and then talked with them and their managers about kind of, you know, hey, would there be value in you using this on a daily basis? Surveyed them, how would you use it? You know, things of that nature. And we put together a little process where we would sit down, we'd take a look at it together on a regular basis, the data. They would go out and do some things with it, come back, give me feedback on it. And what we did from there was, after we did a little test, was we built a business case around, so there were some good results from it. And people were like, yeah, you know, this would be something that we should do. And so what I did was I built a business case then of what would this look like? This concept that we tested and got some small wins in, what would this look like at scale? What would it take from a cost perspective? And what do we think we could get if we rolled this out to everybody in the company, right? Based upon the few little wins that we had gotten out of the initial test, right? And the feedback from the test. Made my business case a heck of a lot stronger because I actually had people that had been using the data to augment this case and speak to the value in it, right? It's one thing to have an analyst talk to the value in a data project. It's quite another thing to have a sales manager speak to the value of it because they've actually started to use it. What we do from here is Katie talked about this kind of the 4 prongs of how we try to make our analytics project super impactful. And so after we build a business case, you know, that starting block we always believe is a good data source. And so usually in the business case, part of it is, you know, investing in what we need to do from an infrastructure perspective to, you know, get a good quality data source put together that we on the front end of the business can tap into and actually have confidence in terms of the fact that it's sustainable. We can put out insights to the business. We know they're accurate, things like that. From there, you know, we worked with, and in this project, I worked with our sales team very frequently to make sure that they understood the dashboards that were making this data available to them. So many sessions, kind of working sessions with them on, hey, you know, what do you make of this? How's it been going? How should we tweak it? Things of that nature. So making sure that what we were putting forward to our sales team and our users corporately was intuitive. So important. And then making sure the users were engaged. So what this looked like practically on this project was, you know, making sure that the managers of our sales team, the managers of anyone using the tool that we put together, were aligned with us in terms of how they were going to use it, what the use cases were initially, and we started with smaller use cases. and how they would be measured on using it, right? And then we were very intentional about doing kind of one-on-one training sessions with every single user with their manager on board. I always joke that, 5 minutes of a sales manager telling something to a sales team member, it would take me 5 hours, to say the same thing to them. When they hear it from their manager, it's totally different, right? The engagement is totally different. So being very, very intentional about how we rolled it out, how we trained folks, how we got them engaged. And then the final piece that Katie spoke to earlier was having a process for using this. So what we did was we worked with the managers again to develop kind of KPIs around how they would use this tool. We developed some usage reporting so that the managers could see which team members were using it, which weren't, and it was not intended to be punitive. We were very, very adamant that this could not be a punitive thing. It was meant for coaching. So if someone wasn't using something, in a certain way that was intended, manager would see it and they would coach to it. They would say, hey, have you ever thought about using this tool for this purpose? Person probably was just too busy to get to it, right? So things like that, we put these kind of right on the inflection point there because when you do those, and it's totally soft stuff, right? Users are engaged, process for using. When you get that stuff going, that's when you really start to unlock the power of a good analytics project from our experience on the front end of the business. And then the cool thing is advanced use cases really start to naturally emerge. So go back to, kind of the beginning of starting small, didn't go in with this project saying, hey, I'm gonna do this grandiose thing out of the gate, right? People would have thought I was crazy and would have had no part of it, right? But we started small, we tested the concepts, we built a good foundation. Now people are coming to us, and it's not just with this project, it's with Katie's project as well, and saying, gosh, could you do A, B, and C? Could you, automate how we identify leads, things of that nature, right? I'm not pushing. That is pull. That's coming from the stakeholders in the business, right? That's what happens, we believe, when you follow things kind of in a manner like this. And then speed to implement increases. So Katie mentioned how she was able to build a dashboard to respond to the COVID crisis, almost overnight. And that is something that would absolutely not have been possible had we not laid a good foundation to get there, right? When she started building all the foundation for what she ended up using for COVID, she did not know that a global pandemic was coming, right?
No.
No? You didn't?
Shockingly, I did not.
Okay, all right. Okay.
Just wanted to know the data.
Yeah.
And it got us there.
But what happened was because she had followed these steps, she was able to produce something like that almost overnight, right? Crisis hits, need something very quickly, and there it is. All right. And then last comment here, how I like to remember this is, does anyone know Michael Jordan? Ooh. Anyone heard of Michael Jordan? Yeah, right? How many folks remember this picture right here, the shot? He hit this to win his first playoff series. Seen this on any posters anywhere? Yeah, probably. I would guess that probably a fewer number of you knew that it actually took him 350 games into his career before he hit the shot. So 5 seasons in the NBA before he hit the shot and before they won the first playoff series. What the heck does this have to do with data? In the early part of his career down here, those first 350 games, that build-up right here that we saw in the chart earlier, Jordan was constantly improving and putting his team in a position to win, right? And what does that mean for data, analytics, any sort of technical project? You start small, you test concepts, you build business cases, you build good data sources, you lay a good foundation, put your team in position to win. And then as we go past the inflection point I just talked about, what happens on top? So for Michael, he won championships. I bet everybody remembers the 6 championships that he won, right? I remember watching a lot of those games as a kid. I didn't remember the 350 games he played in before he hit the shot, I can tell you that. How does this tie to analytics? So when you have the courage to stick through this stuff down in the bottom slope of this curve, what happens, just like MJ had the courage to stick through those losing seasons, right? What happens is advanced use cases start to emerge. People come to you for things, right? You get big wins. You're not getting big wins down here in the beginning, right? You got to have the courage to just stick with the process. And you're able to repeat, just like Katie did, high-value projects. She had done projects based upon the data source she had put together for POS, but nothing like the COVID-19 dashboards that she put together, right? MJ, he was able to repeat championships over and over. So this is really how we see things at Masterlock, and just really are firm believers in having the courage down here to follow a process, build a good foundation, and then get the big wins up here. They will come. They will come. All right, I'll turn it back to you.
Great, thank you. So just wrapping it up here, leveraging data, again, all about the people, the problem, and the process. I heard a really great anecdote from a team member this morning who told me, I did not know this, who told me that a few years before Dustin and I both had joined the company, we used to get point of sale reporting by fax machine, by store. And he would key that into Excel. So that really shows, that right there is showing the people. It takes somebody who really has a commitment to, I know I'm gonna be able to do something with this data, but I have to get it into an organized format. So, and that was before we were at the company. There's been, great people working on this for a long time, but putting it all together with thinking about how we're going to build that culture and expand that culture really into understanding how we can really optimize and get all the way through the process here. And that is the end of our presentation. Thanks so much for having us. I'm not sure if we have time for a question or two. I know we've got the panel coming.
4 minutes and 32 seconds.
4 minutes, okay. Questions, anyone? Yes, here.
Are you taking into account cyclical and seasonal data along with geographic data to predict future inventory needs and things like that? Just looking at everyday invoices?
Yes, yeah, great question. So the snapshots you saw there with the maps are one tab on maybe 5 or 6 tabs of a report, which is one of our many reports that we look at every day. But yes, certainly seasonality in the locks business is pretty big, especially with the locker lock padlock that was on the slide there, the very first slide. So yes, we definitely do watch week over week what that trend looks like, and then year over year as well, to try to predict out what future demand is going to be, and then work with our supply chain partners to think about, okay, how do we use that information to go then manufacture and procure what we need to make sure that we're trying to meet the needs of the end customer. Yep.
So I have a quick question. Dustin, appreciate the Jordan analogy.
Yes.
How do you go back now to the users and justify the wins in the championship? Is it done via ROI? What metrics are you seeking at? What metrics did you set at onset that you accomplished? Can you talk about that a little further?
Yes, no, that is a great question. So the targets were, I would say, a little bit softer in the beginning, and typically this follows suit with other projects that we do. We put kind of incentives around the activities and targets around the activities that we think we hypothesize would lead to wins, and maybe don't necessarily put, as an example, a revenue target on it from the beginning. And that would be true with that project. Now, we absolutely have revenue targets around it, and we still monitor their adherence to KPIs on the activities that we know lead to wins. But we're fortunate enough that we have gone through a full CRM implementation. We can track opportunities and what their activities they're tied to. And so we can actually get pretty good, not perfect, but pretty good visibility in terms of what tool, campaign, et cetera, originated a piece of business. And we have some nice dashboards that get sent out to all the right people and managers and that, to see how we're doing, how we're pacing to now the revenue goals that we have for something like that. Yeah.
So earlier, gentleman from Generac mentioned who has 2 million of anything. I suspect Masterlock does.
Yes,
And
I was
they're
laughing.
growing on that, right?
Yep.
So from a data science and analytics team standpoint, how do you see Masterlock changing with further adoption of the electronic and connected locks?
Sure. Yeah. Well, I don't know the most recent statistics, but I did hear a few years ago that over 90% of the locks that are out there are mechanical still, but as everyone knows, Internet of Things, connected products, this is a big opportunity for many organizations. And so, I think that's part of why we're investing in it. We have a limited right now portfolio of electronic products, but it has grown. But I think it's something new for us, and it's an emerging product portfolio is how I would describe it. Data guy though, not a product guy, so best I can do. I don't know, Katie, if you would say anything different.
Yeah, definitely agree.
Yeah.
Other questions? Okay. Yeah, I think the question was, how are we choosing our technology tools and kind of how we build the use case for those? Yes? Okay, perfect. So yeah, we did an RFP for our visualization software. It was about 3 years ago. So I would say we've been really fortunate to work with our IT and our business intelligence professionals within MasterLock to make sure that there's good kind of both IT and business sign off when we're picking a new vendor like that. So we did go through a pretty formal process, I would say, with that. But mostly our IT team does lead that, although there has been a couple instances where Dustin or I or another member of our team has said, hey, I'd like to test this out. Here's my use case. Here's the business case. Let's acquire a license or two of something new that we haven't used before, prove it out, see how it works, and then figure out if that's the right solution long term or if we need to do something
Says the time is over. So thank you, everyone. We appreciate you having us here. Yep.
Katie and Dustin, thank you very much. Awesome. So we're going to have a quick break. We do have to get back on track. We're going to start the panel at 4, but we're right up against that. We're going to start. Let's take a quick break. Let's be back here at 4:15. We want to get going on the panel at 4:15. Is that okay with you? 4:10. Tim wants 4:10. So I'll meet you halfway, 4:12. 4:10.